All right. Well,
And we're
we're
back.
live here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Appreciate everyone joining us here today. Today we have a special guest here on the show, Maka. We appreciate your time. You know, we this is a night owl session here because this is the day job has to stick around to pay the bills.
Yeah,
So this is where the night owls come in to build the content. But appreciate your time. Want to go ahead,
thank
introduce yourself, kind of share your background, what some of your interests are, and what drove you to be say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna lose a couple hours of sleep to talk with these guys and share some content online. So go ahead, man.
you. Right on. My name is Maka, Three Hollow Maka, but just go by Maka. But yeah, so I'm actually I just came across your channel just from, just I got a big interest in, you know, so-called Polynesian history, but specifically, Tongan history, because, that's something for some as a kid I've always been interested in. I'll sit in a fight cover and just listen to stories to the old men, and
Yeah.
I've always had an interest in just our history, But as I got older, I started to learn, like, sometimes, you just gotta listen to everything, and you can't take, because as a kid I used to just be like, believe everything, but
Yeah.
because I'm a kid, but as you get older. But yeah, so I mean, I'm interested in a lot of things, sports. I mean, just typical things, but specifically, our history. That's why I came across your channel, and I follow. I mean, whether I've said it before, whether it's right or wrong, I'm just glad it's getting out there. You know what I'm saying? So I just like to watch. I'm interested in all of that, and
No,
so
and we're
I'm
big
always,
proponents of that, man. I think the
yeah,
thing is we just got to have more conversations, right? Everybody's just got to
hmm,
talk, because the
yeah,
truth is the more people are having conversations, and I appreciate you bringing up, how, participating in the Kava Circle. We obviously on this channel, we're big believers that played an important part, because that's where ideas come, right? So in many ways, this podcast phenomenon is a Western version of the Kava Circle, right?
yeah,
That's really what it is. Like,
yeah.
everybody came
That's
because we wanted to hear ideas. That doesn't mean we adopt every idea. That doesn't mean we agree with every idea, but everybody came together to sit down in a calm environment. We understand things can kind of always get out of control, regardless of what you're involved in. But
yeah,
it's the Kavas environment has played a critical role. We think that had a big role in maintaining our independence and so forth. But also, it's interesting to me, especially in the last 5 years, it's Kava is like it's gone into the youth, and it is as exploded. I mean, I'm seeing
yeah.
online like it is everywhere.
Especially
So
out here in Salt Lake.
yeah, it's, I mean, anywhere you go to find a Polynesian community, it has grown into the youth. Now you're having high
Yeah,
school kids. I mean,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? And it looks like in Salt Lake you're seeing it. What's it like in that environment where Kava is just kind of exploding everywhere?
Well, I mean, uh, it it has this what do you call it? Like, it's little there's people that have their little negative comments as far as, like, I mean, we all know the stories of, somebody running off with a throw, or I mean, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of,
Hmm.
to me, I feel like, as we refer, like, in the church sometimes we'll say, that's the individual, like that
Yeah.
was their individual. That's not the whole point. I feel a lot of people got like I've all mixed up, but my opinion on it is, what's funny is, as a kid, even though I like to go sit in on Faikava sessions, like the old men back then when I was growing up, they didn't like us. They used to, like, chase us off and be like, "Hey, go pay attention to school, and you guys can do this later." And
Hmm.
but what's funny is now, uh, I guess more youth are showing interest in, why do we fight kava? Why do we drink kava? Why, where did it originate from? All that kind of stuff. I think they started to accept it in LA specifically. I feel like, because a lot of us kind of just adapted to our environment, right? And LA is just full of gang culture and everything. And then a lot of us Polynesians that live out there pretty much just adopted it as our own culture. And I think because violence and stuff got to a point to where the OGs would rather have us sit there with them than before, because I don't think they realized at the time when they chased us away,
where are you gonna go?
Safe haven. We'll go to the streets. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now, to me, I'm a big supporter of that. I love that. You know, as long as you have, I feel like, because sometimes you got some youngsters too now that just want to hang out with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if they just have a little guidance in how, you know what I mean, how some things you should talk about at the fight call, like but stressing the fact that the whole point of it is just coming together and talking. You know what I mean? That's where it all begins, you know?
No,
And I'm a supporter of that.
100%.
I'd rather have them doing that than other things, you know, to be honest. So
and you answered that, because that was going to be my comment is, you know, when the OGs, because that's probably how they grew up, is like, hey, tell the kids to go in Tonga, right? But Tonga is a whole totally different environment. Man, when you're telling the kids to kind of go out, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the streets. They're going to go there. And then, you know, a natural outcome of that is when you're out on the streets, you have to associate with people. So what would you do? You associate with the people that lead to violence. And we were having that conversation, I think, with Lolo on our last guest podcast.
I gotta watch that too.
The challenge is like, here's one of the things, and I was using this as an example. The Polynesians in general are blessed with physical capacity, right? When I mean that, I mean size, speed, and then you add in there's a certain mentality that sometimes, I don't know if it's genetic or culture or what, but there's like a switch that turns. And it's just, you know, if we're gonna die, we're gonna die. We're just gonna go. You know what I mean? And that becomes very useful in certain environments that bad people can take advantage of you, like in a violent environment. No, and that's what I'm referring to. Having someone on your side that can just seek and destroy is very useful in a violent environment, right? And so it gets taken advantage of. But it also is something that's positive if you can use that in sports to control it, to be aggressive in a sporting environment. But I think that's an interesting thing that, like you were talking about, that Kava is having this kind of resurgence, is what we'll call it. And then just real quick to the viewers, I see
my
there's
bad,
a couple.
Not to cut you off, but going back to what you were saying, just to touch on that a little more, like I feel like the reason, I don't, again, if it's genetic or not, like we're a very I say loyal people. We're really loyal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Good or bad. Like for our friend, like we got that saying in the streets, like ride or die for our friends.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's wrong, like that's my boy, I'm gonna do, you know what I mean? If we go down, we're going down together. We're just a very loyal people.
Yes.
Culturally and all that.
Yeah. Positive and it can be used for good or bad. And I'm glad you brought that up, Maka, because the criticisms of Kava is not a reflection of Kava itself. It's a reflection of the individual. Like, for example, when social media first came out, a lot of people were against social media because why? The early adopters were using the version of running away with the toa that was happening on social media all the time. Right. And so everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's evil. We gotta not adopt. And then now everybody realizes, no, it's here to stay. And it can be used for positive things and for negative things. And it just depends on the individual and the groups. And Kava is in the same way. If you want to use something for a bad purpose, nobody's going to stop you. Whether Kava is there or not, you are going to do it. So don't blame Kava for it. You know?
Definitely.
So the comment I was just going to make earlier was, hey, on the viewers, go ahead, add a comment. We can see them and we'll pull them up on the screen to discuss any comments that pop up.
If anybody,
if anybody's any of those night owls, maybe hopefully in a Kalapu somewhere, they'll put us up on a TV screen. But another thing I just wanted to talk about as you growing up, what was it like growing up in LA, playing sports? How was that? What kind of experience was it playing sports? What sports did you play? Just kind of give a background on what you got involved in when you were younger in sports and so forth.
Well, I mean, you know, again, as a culture, like we can't really, we never like to toot our own horn or anything. Not that I was anybody special or anything, but you know, we're always taught to be humble. But I can speak about, you know, my family, just family wise. I got so many. Again, I don't know if that's genetically we're built like that. just as polys, but my family specifically, there's so many direct athletes like I'm directly related to. Like it just run in the bloodline, you know. So
yeah,
I tried my you know, I was just always active as a kid. Again, no nothing. I felt like if I probably could have been a better overall athlete if I really focused my attention on like, you know, practice or lifting weights or whatever. I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't the most naturally gifted, you know what I'm saying? But I was there's just so many distractions, and I don't know if you call it ADD, ADHD or whatever, but as a kid, my focus will be here. And then if I see something, the second I see something else, like a party or something referring meaning when I was in high school, like I was just distracted so easily, you know what I'm saying? But like sports was fun, but I think what turned my life in another direction was cause my father passed away when I was young, you know, and me being the oldest, I kind of, I wouldn't say I pretty much had to grow up, you know what I'm saying, right away.
Because I had like timeline.
I had like 5 younger siblings. I'm the oldest. My mom at the time was only like 35, you know what I'm saying? And she had these 6 kids. Me, I was 14 at the time. I was a freshman in high school. And you could tell, like, I think looking back in retrospect, I could see how that losing that father figure, somebody I was so close to, reflected in my, like, I went from like a 4.0 to like a 0.6. I don't even know how I was doing in school. That's how much it affected me. You know what I'm saying? And so we got the single mom with these 6 little kids in the middle of the hood. We lived in Inglewood. The street isn't there anymore. We was living on 102nd and Prairie in Inglewood. Right now, that's currently pretty much where they're building the new Clipper Stadium. Across the street from where the Rams is at. So the way it looks now, it like doesn't even, it's like night and day.
Not even close to what it was.
No, not even close. Yeah. So back then it was just, I mean, you could call it a war zone. People from out there know, like whoever sees this, they know how it was back then.
Yeah.
But we were just so used to it. For us, it was kind of, I wouldn't say nothing, but it's just like, we know what to look for. We know what signs to look for. What, if a car's driving slow or looking,
you adapt to the environment. Yeah.
Yeah. We naturally just became, I mean, I wouldn't say naturally, but we just built the habit of like having our head on a swivel, knowing what to look for. But again, that was normal, but I feel like looking back, maybe if I probably would have pursued sports if I put more effort towards it. But like I said, I almost lost all interest in sports. Like when my dad passed, it was just kind of like, to me, life, it wasn't, sports wasn't as important. I was just kind of like,
You're just trying to get through life.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's hard at that point. You're just trying to get through life at that point.
I had to figure out a way to just mask the pain, you know what I'm saying? And I'll be the first to, I'll keep it real. I'll keep it 100. And I was the first one, you know what I'm saying? Like I started going to, drugs and alcohol, but that's something that everybody was doing at that time. My age group where I grew up, that was just a normal thing, you know what I'm saying? But looking back now, I felt I can see that I used a lot of that to kind of like, hide the mask pain and stuff.
Yeah.
Because, we're taught growing up, we don't show our emotions, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So because I couldn't really speak out and like pour my heart out to somebody, to my bro or whatever, I would just drink it or smoke it away or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Not really away because it's still there no matter what, you know what I'm saying?
Temporary,
but I feel like
temporary fix.
Yeah, definitely. But I feel also everything happened for a reason, you know what I'm saying? Like I probably wasn't meant to be some athlete or this or that, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm where I'm at, for a reason, you know what I'm saying?
I'm a big believer in that. And just I obviously can't say much because I haven't gone through that type of experience, but the number one statistic of whether someone grows up in poverty or not is a single mother home. Yeah. Right? Like once you go into that scenario, the statistics are relatively clear. Incarceration rates are like at 70 to 80% for the kids, right? Yeah. And then the poverty level, you're 90% more likely to be in poverty. Just that's not having a father in the home is a huge hurdle. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, what you've been able to accomplish where you are now, you've beaten a lot of statistics. I'll tell you that right now. the statistics were stacked against you from the moment your father wasn't in the picture anymore, unfortunately.
And I feel like, I don't know, somebody was praying for me or just naturally as a kid. So as troubled as a youth as I was, like I did a really good job as like portraying the good kid, being the oldest kid, but behind closed door, because I'll do it for my mom, you know, as long as she sees I'm doing good. But, you know, and I love my mom to death, but like behind the scenes though, she didn't even, I hid a lot of it. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to just keep because I know my mom was so fragile at the time. But just as a kid, I had to act out. I couldn't hold it all in. You know what I'm saying? But like, I was always one to use my head, because there were certain situations where it probably could have been worse for me. I probably could have been locked up. I probably could have been killed. Again, many prayers been answered, but I was that type of individual where, you know, let's go do this or do that. Man, you know what I'm saying? Let's go. That's a call right there. But I would think the first person I would see in my head was I was, you know, because a lot of us, again, being so loyal, is like act now, think about it later.
Yeah,
I was different. I was like, again, I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm somebody special or anything, but I would always think, how is this going to affect my mom? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm going to go, you know what I'm saying, do this, you know, shooting or go rob this or whatever. If I get locked up, all I could picture in my head was my mom crying. And that would like stop me to make something up. Like, hey man, you know what? Y'all go ahead and do this, and I gotta go
do
this.
that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so my mom was like definitely a saving grace, and like, but I was always somebody. I don't know if it's because I'm the oldest. You know, sometimes they say when you're the oldest, you move and think a little different. I always thought about my mom and my siblings first before I did anything.
Impact of your actions.
Yeah. I still did a lot of dumb things. Don't get me wrong, because you know I'm still young. I'm still learning.
But it could have been a lot worse, as they
could have
say,
been
right?
a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I count myself as blessed being still alive, because there are times that, you know, I could have not been here a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just blessed to be here.
Nah, that's cool, man. Nah, and that's a huge blessing. So let's fast forward a little bit on the decision to move to Utah.
Yeah.
Kind of give us a little insight there, and then we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll jump onto the social media. Just for the viewers, see a handful of viewers.
Right on.
Feel free to make a comment. We can put it up here. Like Fobland here. It looks like this is a kalapu you guys go to.
Yeah.
Maka.
Fobland, that's another thing that kind of helped me out too, was my life would have been way worse without Fight Kava. I'll keep that real too. If there was no Fight Kava, I would have just kept drinking, kept smoking. You know what I'm saying?
Gave you another option. Yeah.
The culture kept pulling me. You know what I'm saying? I say culture because Fight Kava is the culture. You know what I'm saying? So that saved me a lot of times. But what I ended up joining the church because it's a long story short. I was a female was involved, and kind of just ended up changing my life and kind of pretty much getting baptized, you know what I'm saying? And that was a whole, that story too with my family and everything, because my family's a very strong, Wesleyan family.
Yeah. And
to this day, technically I do have, so there's in my whole family, I do have a brother who technically is, like a member of the LDS church. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's pretty much what kind of led me coming into eventually moving over to Utah, because if it wasn't for that, I'd still be in LA, to be honest. So joining the church led me, I did actually serve a mission. So joining the church led me to going on a mission to getting back home, staying in LA again for a little bit, making a move to Utah, because when I first joined the church, not the girl that I kind of, got serious with in the first place, but my wife now, we started, I kind of met her, here in Salt Lake, and we started talking, and then one thing led to another. We just had a long relationship of talking to each other, writing each other on the mission, breaking up, getting back together, break how many times, and then finally, eventually, dating different people and trying to just find your, your so-called, eternal companion, as we call it. But, and then eventually just ended up working out, you know, and my mom, again, because being a firstborn, I know that's, you know, in our culture, that's a big thing. You know what I'm
It's a
saying?
big responsibility. Yeah.
Especially if you're a boy, you know what I'm saying? And my mom was, it just broke her heart when I moved out here. She's like, why are you moving to Utah? And like, why, you
You're
know,
my
like, what
right-hand
about,
man.
you know,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? What are we going to do? And all that. And I said, Mom, I got a plan. I'm going to move to Utah. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to get us a house and all y'all can move out there. Not even realizing, like, what if they don't want to move out here? You know what I'm saying? I didn't even think about that. And that's what happened. They didn't want to move out here, but I did get a house, and like I've accomplished a lot of things that I probably
Well,
wouldn't
and
have
that
been able to do
option
in
is
LA.
available to them. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of comfort in knowing there's a second option. If the
Oh,
sky falls tomorrow, Maka has a spot we can all go to, right? You know, that to me adds value. That provides at least some kind of relief.
Yeah. But that's pretty much definitely what led me out to Utah, was just it all begins with, you know, joining the LDS church, and then kind of pretty much snowballed from there.
Where did you serve your mission at?
Montana, man.
That's the mission. Big sky country.
That's the mission right there. It's different now because now they have so I don't know if you know, they're building a temple in Missoula, and that Missoula is a city of Montana, and Missoula is going to become its own mission. So they're starting to like make it a little smaller. But when I went out, it was just the whole state of Montana
was
like
one mission.
The northern third of Wyoming, and then there was a town in North Dakota. We covered all of that. You know?
Okay. Yeah, and I used to drive by Missoula all the time on my way to Spokane, Washington on the 90.
Oh, wow.
My wife's from Spokane, Washington, so we would
really?
take the 15 and then take the 90 and go west.
Wow.
And that's
nice
where,
out there, huh?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Too cold for my liking. One of the reasons why I'm not in Salt Lake. I'm in Texas, I like the warmer weather a little bit more.
Yeah, I bet it's hot out there right now.
Oh, dude, it was. Man. We were outdoors we took my kids out to go to an aquarium, and like 80% of it is indoors. We went outdoors for like 15 minutes, and we were like, "Yeah, let's get back in. Let's get back indoors."
I can't. I mean, if we're like in the 90s, I can't imagine out there.
Oh, dude, yeah, it was.
Because you guys are humid too.
Yeah, we not as bad as Houston, but we do get humid. And I think last year we had 40 days in a row over 100.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets pretty hot.
That's just the environment out. I mean,
that's the norm.
Yeah.
So cool. Anything else, man, you want to touch? And then I'll key up the social media here real quick for us. But anything else you want to touch base on?
I'm just right now. I'm still me. I appreciate the little things in life. You know, I can't even believe I'm on the podcast right now with the bro right here. You know, and probably I don't know if you're gonna post this, and then I'll probably look back and watch it, you know, with the wife and be like, hey, that's
well, it's already live. So here's the good news.
Oh, yeah.
We're live. You can go back and look at it. I may chop it up. That's one of the reasons why I like going live, because we can have some new questions come on, but then I can go back and chop it up, and because we're trying to be efficient, right? Because this is the night gig, a live gives access to people, some questions to come, and I'll mention it again to those who are viewing. If you have a question that you guys want us to kind of bring up, or a video or something you guys want us to take a look at, put it in the comments, and we'll follow through on that. But we're going to go to our plan here and talk about the comments real quick. So this is usually interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. Like some of the comments aren't always the nicest, but hey, you want to get into the field and play. Sometimes you get beat up every once in a while.
Hey, what they say, that comes with the territory, you know?
Yes, 100%. So what we're going to do here is let's start with this one. These are ones that just came in, so I will just read through these real quick. And this is in response to this is a series that I did with my older brother Daniel. This is
okay.
And this Japanese does give connections with Polynesians. The Ainu have connections to Ainu'u in Samoa and Kainuku in Rarotonga. I can't speak on what Ainu'u in Samoan is, but in Rarotonga, it's almost a title sort of thing. I've heard similar words in Polynesian and Japanese. One word is puku in Japanese means belly. In Maori, puku means the same belly also. Puku hatu in Rarotongan means heart. puku in Rarotongan can also mean the intestines, and pu'uvai in Hawaii means heart. So yeah, we have had contact back and forth in the days. And then so this is from Original Claymore. Sorry, I was typing too fast. Didn't make sense on some of the lines. Understood. So I don't know if you saw this episode, Maka, but my brother, Maui, the Mauis, right?
Yeah.
There was one.
I think I've seen an episode.
Yeah, there was one there, and I'll add this comment here just so we have it, and then when we'll come back to it. There was one of the Mauis was called Maui Kisi Kisi. And yes. And so my brother had shared that the rumor on the street is, right? The rumor in the street, some of the oral history is, so Kisi Kisi is dragonfly.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it is in Tongan. The sorry, I'm trying to type here at the same time.
I think I remember that with he's talking about
the headdress,
the headdress with the samurai,
yes,
right?
Yes,
ornamentation and all that. Yeah.
And so that's what he's referring to. This comment is he's referring that there are other Japanese names and connections to Japan that may further indicate that connection, because our ancestors, I just recorded an episode with my father today, and he just covered the distances that our ancestors were going, right? And these distances are from Tonga to America, or let's go to Easter Island, is like 4,000 miles, just under 4,000 miles, and then another 3,000 miles to hit South America. So we're talking about 7,000 miles. Hawaii is 3,000 miles. So our ancestors were just going up and down the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And so
I do remember you mentioning something about I forgot what episode it was, talking about they didn't go south for some reason or something, or
so you have the equator, and then you have the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. They tried to keep the majority of their normal travel every year within the two Capricorns, or the two tropics, sorry. And that's it's just logistics, right? Because there are certain seasons of the year where the weather is terrible, like the hurricane seasons. The last thing you want when you're out on a boat right into a hurricane, you're done. And so depending on the seasons and where you could travel, the majority of the time you just stayed within the two tropics.
Yeah.
But the mention on Maui Kisi Kisi and so forth may be because, like right here, this headset, and there's one specific one that has two on it. And that's where they say, because Maui Kisi Kisi may have reached Japan and had come back with the headset. And the Kisi Kisi was a reference to this headset that this specific Maui brought. Yeah. So yeah, that's what that comment specifically in there. Any thoughts? Yeah, that's what that's referring to. Any thoughts on that at all, Maka?
Yeah, as far as like traveling goes, I mean, for them to cover those islands that are so small, like I don't doubt them being able to go, like, you know how they say the sky's the limit. I feel like they could have gone anywhere within what you were saying, within that region right there. But as far as like the I'm not a historian or nothing, but I'm just a fan, and I love history in general, you know what I'm saying? But if I do remember correctly, and y'all could correct, sorry if I'm wrong, if I'm totally off, but like I know like the Ainu people, I feel if I remember correctly, were like indigenous to Japan. Yeah. But the more Oriental people or whatever who came over from, I don't know if you remember if it was Korea or China or something.
China.
They kind of just killed them off or chased them off, and everyone else who was left alive adapted. So I feel like the two cultures, but I know the two cultures weren't even the same. You know what I mean? I knew, if I remember correctly, you know what I mean? So,
no, yeah, you're right. You're right. And that's where, you're 100%. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
But I mean it, but I feel as far as like Maui Kisi, if that were the case that he reached out there and came back, I feel like that's not out of the question.
Yeah. So I just pulled up here. So Japan is just under 5,000 miles away. So that's just going a little bit further than Hawaii, and it's shorter than getting to America. Oh, yeah. And so definitely within the distance of range for the
definitely.
Polynesians.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, I I could I can never say nothing 100%, but like that's why I say it's not
it's possible.
It's definitely possible. Definitely.
And here's the crazy thing, Maka, and I didn't realize this until I mean it's like these 2 points, but until someone brings it up, you don't put 2 and 2 together. But I was watching this one Palangi guy who he went to Tonga. And that's a good point, Ugu. Land of the Sun. One of the Tangaloa and the Tuitonga are referred to as the sun. That's so when so that I mean it's interesting, right? Like nothing is like 100% proof. Oh yeah, and here's another good point right here. Ra was also referenced as the sun.
Egypt.
Yeah. So there's just interesting, like you said, nothing is like a smoking gun, but
I mean, so you hear Ra, like how do you say sun in Tongan? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So so there's just some interesting points, but the thing that I was going to mention here, hey Clyde Moore, appreciate the comment there. So good, welcome to the show.
Yeah, what's up, Clyde Moore, man? Appreciate the tapping in.
Yes, sir. So one of the things that I didn't put it together, but I think and I want to see what the listeners' thoughts are on this is. So we have the Kaldias, right? They're traveling thousands of miles.
Yeah.
Do you know that the Langis and more than likely the Ha'amonga, those rocks are not from Tonga?
I've heard of that.
They had to ship these things.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking like 40 to 50 tons of rock. And all the Langis, because Tonga's rock, there's not enough rock in Tonga. So just imagine this.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of rocks being shipped hundreds of miles away.
I'm just thinking about them getting it, moving it, and getting on Kalia. And then,
exactly.
And then taking it off. Man, it's crazy.
No, and that's what I'm saying. Like, see, this is the thing is the more we dig into our history, it just gets even more interesting because even today, that would be a difficult thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To ship something that's 40 tons, the equipment, and even with all the equipment and technology that we quote unquote have today, that's a major operation, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like
that's a major feat right there.
Exactly.
I feel like we kind of underestimate just because we're so advanced today. Like, I feel we just kind of, for some reason, just it's easy to just say, it wasn't possible. I don't know how they, you know what I mean? Or
exactly.
We don't like to call it because that's you have to have been advanced in some kind of way to be able to do that. Like you said, we can't. That's hard to do today.
Exactly. And like Uku here is saying, lost technology. I can't. We can't deny that, right? When they study the rock and they say, oh, the rock's not even from Tonga.
Yeah.
And we realize, oh, it's from hundreds of miles away. It's the same thing with the Egyptians. We look at what the Egyptians did and we can't even figure out how they cut the rock so smooth. Man. Because, and this is what I think is hilarious. The academics say, oh, they use hand tools. Siana, go and work yate for a day and tell me how you're going to get it that smooth with a hammer and a chisel. This is where the knowledge of the academics falls short. Yeah. They just, you can just go out there and, use a hammer and a chisel. Siana, go and build a rock wall and then come and tell me you can do that with a hammer and a chisel.
That's people that have never worked with their hands whenever it's easy to say that. But like you said, till you try it, then you'd be like, I don't think that's how they did it.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. So another comment here from Tongan Style Malapito. What about the science approach? This is a funny. I have to share this story, Tongan Style, after I read your comment. What about the science approach to Homo erectus, the fire bringer of whom the Pacific Islanders tie to? How does Maui's ancestor become a fire bringer? Very interesting, right? When you look at a lot of the big scientific questions and tying human beings getting fire, and we have stories of how fire comes about. So there's definitely some interesting relationships there. Any thoughts on that one, Maka, before I share my funny story.
No, you can share your story. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't know as much about that part as far as like, you know, I mean, we all know the mythology and stuff behind it, but
yeah,
I probably
interesting.
would know much more than you. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. But yeah, so the funny story is this. It's my wife is taking online courses from BYU Idaho,
Okay.
and she was taking like a biology class, and I thought she was being pau'u to me, you know, because she goes, oh, you know, the human beings Homo erectus, right? And I'm like, excuse me, you know, I said maybe your ancestors had a Homo erectus.
Hey,
and I was like, because I thought she was trying to pull my leg, you know. I was like, that's why it cracked me funny, up here. Bro. This cracked me up here at Tongan style, the Homo erectus, because I thought my wife was being pau'u to me. And then lo and behold, she was educating me. And it's like, no, honey. She pulled out the textbook and showed the monkey. And then I guess Homo erectus is when the first monkey stood up and started walking on two legs.
That's the whole the evolution theory or whatever.
Yeah, there we go. Tongan Style's having a good laugh on that one. Hi, Sarah. Appreciate the comment. Thank you. Welcome Sarah. To the stream. Yeah. So yeah, that was the story on that. So we'll come back. We'll come back to the comments here. Oh, and by the way, for everyone listening, my wife thinks my shirt is ugly. She was like mocking me for a couple days. So I said, you know what? You think it's so ugly? I'm gonna wear it on the stream. And I think it's a good shirt, but my wife was like, that looks like my grandma's scarf. I was like, man, your grandma had good style.
That's man, you got the Versace on.
Hey, if anybody wants Versace from Temu, go on to the big and tall section on Temu, and for $9. Man. According to Temu, there was only like 5 left. But
can't even tell.
Oh, here's another comment here from Clyde Moore. My uncle told me this story that the Tui Tonga was in Futuna and was shipping rock back to Tonga. And when they were about to leave with their utamaka, a half-human Tevolo asked to hitch a ride. On their travels, the hitchhiker ate all their rations, so the Tui Tonga tauteai him to unload the Maka by himself when they got back. There's the technology right there, Maka.
Man, you just answer the question, man.
Who needs a crane when you can just tautea ya Tevolo to take everything off?
Right, for real, man.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a good one, Clyde Moore. Yeah. Appreciate it, Malo. That is hilarious,
man.
Let's come back here and go through some more comments. This one, hey, Clyde Moore. Appreciate the love also on YouTube as well. So this one said, this is the one with Lolo Tuyaki. Love this episode. One of my favorite Tongan channels on YouTube. Malo Abito, Clyde Moore.
That's love.
That was an interesting conversation to Kava and the respective religious authorities. I myself was brought up in the Ahofitu, so 7-day Adventist. How so Kava ceremony was and still is foreign to me. From the outside looking in, the benefits of which far outweigh the negatives, which is kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning, right, Maka?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you weigh the pros and cons, because everything has a pro and a con, Kava seems to bring a lot of positives to the table.
Definitely.
How often does society present the opportunity for elders and youth to trade ideas and thoughts in fellowship? Hold this as a sacred and integral part of our culture for the generations to follow. And I think, you know, this is exactly what you were talking about, Maka. You know, the youth wanted to, you know, get closer to the OGs to learn. And I think, you know, I think we're learning from the mistakes we've made from the past of kind of like telling the kids, hey, go do your own thing. When in reality, bring them in and teach them, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, like I said earlier, like, I'm a big supporter of that. I'm all for it because, to me, it's all it's like the intention behind everything. As long as it's positive and good, like it's never a bad thing.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So,
100%.
Yeah, and you can learn from these kids too. You know,
no, and that's the thing.
That's one thing. That's another thing too.
Because how else are you going to understand? And this is the thing that's interesting. the OGs bring the past, right? And they help anchor us. But the reality is the future is an unknown. And how else are you going to know how to position your knowledge from the past to navigate the future if you don't know what's going on out there? And I think that's what the youth brings to the conversation, right? An OG can take a position, and then a young person can say, well, how does that relate to this? Right. And then hopefully as you're having that conversation, you know, the OGs are learning something new and the youth are learning something from the past, and hopefully make decisions that help them be successful.
Man, it's a beautiful thing.
Here, we'll finish here. The comment here. Let's say, I would ask, if you guys weren't in your denomination of religion, would you still critically link it back to what your scriptures say? Is there a chance of bias? 100%. Everybody has bias, because really what bias means is we look at life through our experiences, right? And we can, this is why Kava ceremonies or the Kava kalapus and stuff are so important, because why? Everybody brings their experience. This comes back to what we were talking about earlier. Let's say you have a PhD guy come to a kalapu, and then you have a yate guy come to the kalapu, right? And then they're talking about Egypt, and the PhD guy who knows all about the language, you know, all this language and fancy stuff about Egypt, and he says, "Oh yeah, the Egyptians, they just use hammer and chisel." Well, the yate guy, he's like, "Hey, dude, you're now entering where I have a PhD, right?" And I'll tell you right now, there ain't no way these guys were there with chisels and made that rock that smooth, right? Nope. And that's where these ideas come together. So you're supposed to come with your bias, but you're just, don't make your bias think that's the only ideas out there.
Yeah, you got to be open to. I felt a lot of these people not open, man. They just run with what they, you know, like you were saying, like
No, and 100%. You know, it says here, I only ask because it feels like there's context missing for people outside of your religious beliefs that would have us be critical. 100%. And I'm laughing not because of that, Clyde Moore. I'm laughing because of the next one. Go Trump, by the way. Have these uncomfortable discussions and these bad ideas out. We need to leave better world behind. 100%. 100%. We are big believers. From my perspective, I will hand it over here to Maka to his share. It's better to have ideas fight each other than us fighting each other. Have the ideas compete. Let the ideas, you know, compete, and then everybody can look at the competition of the ideas and decide what they want to believe. But any last thoughts on this comment here, Maka?
No, that's funny because we was just talking about that, you know, at the Mixler Fight Kava last night. We were talking about, you know, politics and all that kind of stuff. I've never really a lot of the, because my upbringing, you know, I'm gonna just throw it out there. You know, I didn't my parents, because we were eventually gonna move back to Tonga with my pops before he passed. So I never really, I didn't have a green card, you know, for a long time. I was an overstay, you know what I'm saying? And so I never got into politics because I couldn't even vote, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't of importance to me for a long time, you know, until I got older and kind of understood it a little more. But tying in last night, there's somebody in there that's all they do. Like they're into politics, sharing their ideas and stuff. But I'm always open to, you know what I'm saying? Like I'll never say who's right or wrong or whatever. I'll just like we're talking about right here. I'll just take it all in.
Yeah.
Get every piece of info I can see, and it's just like, you know, make a decision for myself or my family or whatever. But
100%.
That's what the whole, like you saying, this discussion, that's what the Fight Kava is about. That's what, you know what I mean? And I seen the episode about your dad is kind of like he's this old, but he's still learning, you know what I'm saying? Because he'll still hear certain things.
Yeah. And that's to me, that's the proper mindset, right? To have is you're always learning. There's always something new, because we all realize there are so many ideas, so many experiences that there's no way that my experience and idea is the only answer. It just that doesn't make sense at all. So let's see here. We do have, we are active here on social media. Um, let's go with a couple of these real quick before we continue on the other ones. I heard the old name of New Toa or nickname was called Ha'ameneuri. Hopefully, we're not playing with the words there, Ugu.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned that the Lapita people were short and dark skinned, the original people who arrived in Tonga first. Queen Salote changed the name from Ha'ameneuri to New Toa. Lapita people were alive during Tu'itātui. Someone posted this, thought it was very possible, very, very possible. Because either I'm me personally, I'm open to whether when Tangaloa, Maui, and the Taulas came to Tonga that there could have been people there. I'm open to that because it's a possibility that, you know, the Lapita people were there and you know, Tangaloa and Maui brought new technology, new knowledge, a new system of government that enabled a civilization to be built on. So I wouldn't be surprised to that. Any thoughts on the Lapita people over there in Tonga, Maka?
I mean, I've been seeing your discussions on that, and I, you know, I'm tending to lean more towards what you guys were talking about, because the term Lapita itself, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it already just like throws everything off already. But talking about the short, dark skinned people, whatever, for some reason I'm thinking of, like, you know, they talk about, I don't know if you ever heard about the like Menehunis or whatever from Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yeah.
That's what it made me think of. But
no,
but
and that's a good point, because you gotta, I mean, if we really believe, and this is what we need to ask ourselves, right? If we really believe that our ancestors were moving so freely, and if there were Lapita people all over, then why wouldn't they be going back and forth all the time? So yeah, there could have been a group of shorter, smaller stature people that were moving around, you know, and our ancestors were, quote unquote, the larger people, and we're moving them around. It's very feasible, in my mind.
Yeah.
We have another question here from Tongan Style. While on the talk about religion, our ancestry knowledge was before Christianity by several thousand years. Also, most of the Bible stories were written text from the Library of Alexandria. Correct. Hence written by King James people. Yeah. Maybe give a little more clarification on this Tongan Style, and we'll try and have a discussion on it. But if you could clarify, like, are you trying to express that our ancient religion, if there's any connections with Christianity overall, or not? If you could just kind of give some context to that. Any thoughts on this, Maka?
Well, it's either, like, that's what I like about your channel, because you guys will share what you believe in, but also leave it open to where it doesn't mean you have to believe what we believe, but we're just sharing what we feel is, you know what I mean? So it's either this comment, it's either you're going to be believing what you guys are standing on, and what you believe is that we've always had Christianity, or you go by that we've never had Christianity, but that would pretty much cancel out not believing in what you guys are talking about coming from America or whatever. So I feel like you have to, like, where are you starting from then? Are you starting from we came from Bahi, or is this comment referring to, or were we just non-Christian people, savages from the beginning kind of thing, to be able to make a, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Or like,
I think that's the direction. Says with no connection to Christianity. Still not clear on that, Tongan Style. I'll give my thoughts on it as well. Obviously, as you know, Maka, I tend to lean more towards, and actually this was one of the comments that we've gotten on social media.
Yeah.
We have a short clip that talks about it, and some people are like, man, you guys are crazy. And it's like, well, I'm not going to type a response here, but we'll give it. That's why we have this live. There's a handful of reasons why I believe what I believe of who Hikuleo is. Here's a couple of them. The ancient Tongan belief in an afterlife. That's a fairly rare idea.
Yeah.
Right? The Egyptians have it. Well, guess why? Because the Israelites were going back and forth with the Egyptians all the time, right? So there are very few cultures that on their own came up with the idea of an afterlife. So the fact that our ancestors had an idea of afterlife, and I share the story about George Vason, where he was out fishing with those two guys, and they were talking about the chief who just died, like he was still alive.
He was still
and
there.
George Vason's like, well, I know about an afterlife because I'm a Christian. You know, so he was testing these two Tongans by going, "Why are you talking about him? He's dead. Why are you still talking?" And then the Tongan guy puts his hand on his chest and says, "Yes." Well, he puts on his hand. Yes, puts his hand and says, "This dies."
Yeah.
And then he put his hand on George Mason's chest and says, "This never dies," meaning like the soul,
spirit. Yeah.
So that's a very powerful, to me, piece of knowledge. The other one is George Mason also said that he saw a lot of practices that the ancient Tongans did that were very close to ancient Israel. One of them is how you deal with the dead, like the tapu, the types that the Tongans have. Like if you touch the dead, the law of Moses said you couldn't feed yourself. Like you had to wash yourself and do things. Our ancestors behaved in the same way. There's that we also believed in and practice circumcision. Now, it's not just the Jews who did circumcision. There were some others, but God said, Abraham, you're going to do this practice. That's a representation of our covenant with each other. And so a handful, and then pulotu, right? Pulotu, which we say is the spirit world. There's pulotu aka, and I always forget the other one, tu'uma'u, I think is what it's called. So in the spirit world, there is a chaotic, painful spirit world, and there's a calm and peaceful. So when you start to add up all these little things, and there's a bunch more, it's like, well, dang, it kind of seems like we might have known something, you know? And then they say, you know, some people have said, oh, but, you know, they were talking about half shark, half head. And I said, like, dude, in the Bible, the Jews were dying to worship a calf how many times, right? It seems to be a natural product of when you don't believe in the God of Israel, Jehovah, you naturally migrate to other types of gods. This is not a phenomena of non-Christians. You have Christian nations or biblical nations, they always want to go away. Human nature is to go find a different God, an easier God, you know, a God that we can see and touch rather than the Jehovah. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Tongan style. We appreciate it. We'll have a couple more. Yeah, dude, we are on fire here on some of these comments. So I take more precedence to the live comments and questions here in Maka. So we're gonna give them our attention, and then to fill in the gaps, we'll come back to the other guys. I'll send a link to this Fijian YouTube channel, one video of the elders saying their origin story, stating that they came from Memphis, Egypt. I have heard that.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, I had a Fijian buddy at BYU said that they have some history that they come from, you know, Northern Africa, Egypt. So very possible. I'm not aware of any specific areas of evidence per se, but like we said, just because there's no evidence, maybe one day that evidence will come up, but right now we haven't seen it. How do you feel about a lot of African-American scholars saying that Polynesians were originally black people from Africa? Have you seen pictures of Tongans in the 1800s? We were very melanated people. Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Maka? Anything?
You know, I'm not an expert on DNA or anything, but I do agree with as far as like the before mingling, you know, with the Europeans and having kids and stuff. I mean, that's just evidence. I mean, you can't deny that. There's I'm not saying that they were African or anything, but all the pictures, we were darker people. You know what I mean? We're you know, darker brown skin and stuff like that. But as far as like the DNA stuff goes, or you know, I can't say nothing on that. But yeah, I agree with the, you know, back in the days, you know, before the Europeans came, we were all darker people, you know. But
yes,
I mean,
here are some interesting things to take into account, David. And go and read, I believe it's George Mason. Okay, and I'm trying to think, and I probably should have this more in my head.
Yeah, I think I just read his book like a couple months ago. But
if you reread it, and I'm thinking it's in there, or someone else, or maybe it's the missionaries, they stated that some Tongans were fair as almost like they were Europeans.
Oh wow.
Okay, and just look at some of the royal family today. Some of them are actually relatively fair. But
that's a good point, because some of the pictures we have, like, there's no way that we have every picture of every Tongan. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But the ones we have now probably are just maybe they
Well,
did.
possibly. And I'm just throwing out an idea, right? I mean, and look at the Maoris. If I remember correctly, one of the reasons why the Maoris put the tattoos on their faces was because the leaders were always indoor and were much fairer than the average Maori. So when they would go to war, everybody would try and kill each other's leader by looking for the most fair guy on the opposite side and say, let's kill that guy. So one of the reasons why they did the whole facial tattoo was to cover up the face so it was less obvious who the leader was. And so when you're looking at general, even me, believe it or not, if I don't go into the sun, well, I can't really say me because I guess I'm half, but I know my cousins and stuff, when they're not out in the sun, they get relatively light skinned, but when they go out in the sun, they get very dark. And I'm not denying we were always mixing with the Fijians. We were always mixing with who know what other people there. So there's definitely a mix. When I do my DNA, I have Samoan, Tongan, and Fijian blood that comes in there. So there's definitely a mix. But I come back to David. I don't doubt that there's some genetic material Melanesian from Africa. But the one difference is this. Where do the ideas come from? Where does the culture structure? I don't know of a lot of African civilizations that have the same ideas and the same astronomical knowledge, same political structure as our ancestors. So genetic material can come and flow. Today is big evidence of that, right? Our genetic material. My big comeback is if you do genetic studies on Americans, you will never get the idea of what America is. You'll find Asians, African Americans, Polynesians, but that won't tell you what and how America became America, which to me is the more important part.
Yeah. Speaking of, on touching on again, like a little, I don't know if you're aware. I don't know. I don't think there's any connection or anything. Who knows? Maybe there is, but there is like a Tongan language or a Tongan people in like a tribe or something in Africa. I don't know if it's Zimbabwe or something, but it's spelled just like Tonga. Yeah. I don't know if you would look it up but yeah. So I've seen that in some things I've looked up, but
yeah, I know there's a country.
I don't know if there's
there's a country called Toga, right? Because I remember some people when I would first tell them where I'm from, they would say, "Oh, you're from Africa?" I was like, "Not really." Oh no, that's the toga that Romans would wear.
Yeah. Oh, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Yeah, I think Tonga people.
Oh, Togo. That's the one I was thinking. Oh, you're saying it's just a tribe, not necessarily a country.
Yeah, it's like so it's like a group of people that's I think in that region.
Oh, so they're in Zimbabwe.
But it's spelled just like Tonga, but I was like, wow, that it came up on something I was looking up and I was like, what? I mean, again, I don't know if there's a connection or not, but it was just interesting to see that there was something else that had that name, Tonga, you know what I mean? Maybe they pronounce it differently, who knows? But
look at this comment right here. Clyde Moore. Yeah, now back in the day we had no clothes. We were out in the sun daily. Of course, we were.
Yeah, man. Oh yeah, we gonna tan up real good.
Oh, you know what was funny? This Clyde Moore. This reminds me of my grandma, my Tongan grandma in Tonga. So in Tonga, at the end of the year, like around November, you do your finals, and then the last month and a half of like school is just akohiva, and it's like getting ready. It's all about getting ready for graduation or the end of year, right?
Yeah.
So when you're taking your exams, it's a half day. You take your exams in the morning, and then you have the rest of the day off. So I would go swimming at the wafu every day, right? I would go, and then my grandma would get so angry because I would get darker and darker and darker, and my grandma would be like, "Can you stay out of the sun? Look at you. You're getting blacker and blacker." It's like, stay out of the sun. This reminds me of this Paku'uri comment here by Clyde Moore.
Oh, I feel that's like hilarious. every OG lady I feel was like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, because it's from history, from our history, like Clyde Moore here is saying is when you were lower ranked, you were out in the sun all day.
Yeah.
Right? You're out in the sun all day. So in a way, it was kind of you could be misassigned on where you stand by being dark. But in our day right now, that's not how we measure success. Now it's, you have a home, you have, a stable job, you have, certain assets. No one could care how dark you are. In the podcast we recorded today with my dad, he goes, you know what they say, son, here in America? Money talks.
Money talks.
Money talks. So you can be paku uri, but if you have the money, that is what's gonna talk today. Oh man.
The only color that matter here is the green.
Exactly. Another comment. How about the stories of red-haired, blue-eyed Polynesians before the Lapita movement? I'm not aware of that. That's interesting. I'm not aware of I've heard about the red hair, but I haven't heard about the blue eyes. But I have heard of the red hair. Have you heard about either one of those, Maka?
No, I've never heard of. No, first time hearing this.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting about this, and that's the reason why I remember the red hair. If you go to Easter Island, let me see if I can pull it up here. On Easter Island,
this regarding the red hair you talking
yes, about? It had a red top on some of the Easter Island.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull it up. See right here.
They call it Moai or something, right? Or
yeah, exactly. And so right here, top knots formerly paid, and these were red in color. So I don't know. They in one of the videos I watched, they were discussing is it a hat or is it the hair, right? And they were having a discussion on whether these were representative of red-headed people or if it was some type of red head covering that was on top of the head. So, or who knows? Maybe this is Maui Kisi Kisi with his.
Hey, who knows? This can be related. I mean, so I was watching this video, and like in some Melanesian countries, they have naturally blonde kids. I mean, even in Polynesians, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I guess there was a genetic study that they did to where it has no ties to Europeans. So it's just some kind of special where they had their own naturally just blonde hair with no connection to.
Very Europe, interesting.
Right? So I mean, his red hair could be the same situation. Who knows?
So just colored hair is not a European feature. It doesn't automatically mean European. Interesting. And here, this may be related to your comment earlier, Maka. Is Tongan Sao said, I seen a documentary about an African clan who claimed Maui and Tangaloa as an ancestor.
Could be related to
those Tonga guys that you were saying, that one tribe in Africa.
That's crazy. You know, it's crazy. I might after this might look into it more because I seen the name and stuff, but I didn't look into it. I just seen it. I was like, that's interesting, and I moved on. But I might have to go back and
double check that, and that's interesting. Oh yeah, here's another one, David. Have you ever seen a picture of the Inca warriors' headdress? It looks like the headdress of the Tuitonga. I'm not aware of that, David. I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah, but I mean the Incas is from the Americas. So
yes. I'm going to look it up right now to see what it looks like.
That could even be more evidence for, you know what I mean?
Yes, actually, and I'm assuming that this one is the one you're referencing, David. But let me share that with here so Maka
kind of looking like a feather headdress, kind of.
Yes, feather headdress. There are a bunch of feather headdresses, and then there's one specifically, this one that I've seen. Let me click. That I've seen is very similar to the shape of the Tuitonga's head shape, and like this part right here, this part right here.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull up a Tuitonga
like
headset.
that.
But that's an interesting point there, David.
Yeah. That's real good though.
and another, see, very interesting. That's a good point. And there's even a feathered one.
Yeah.
So look at right here. Right, see, kind of like that oval shape that the Tuitonga wore.
Yeah.
And they're saying that some of it was colored and it's feathered. And then when you go back to the Inca one,
that's
crazy. Can't see the similarity. There's similarities there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very interesting. I appreciate that comment, David.
Yep.
And everybody's busy. Everybody, man, we thought everybody was sleeping tonight.
Man, I
Maka.
thought I was gonna be dead tonight. Yeah, man, who knows? People mixing right now, probably just throwing stuff out there.
So a couple more here. There's a link to a documentary I sent in the reply to one of your past videos. The researchers tied red hair from New Zealand to Easter Island and Persia to Alaska. And you know what's crazy? I think I skimmed through that, Clyde Moore, and they were talking about the boats and some of the other technology that they tied to the Alaskas. That you're referencing here that were tied from Polynesian type correlation with some of the tools and stuff that they had there. So yeah, I did skim through that documentary, Clyde Moore. So this documentary, Maka, was talking about how the relationship of up in Alaska, some tribes up in Alaska, like whether it was like the boats and some of the other tools like axes and stuff, that were similar tied to Polynesian tools, and they were making that connection there.
I've seen something to where I seen a documentary on I gotta try to find it. I don't know if it was National Geographic or something, but they're talking about not as far as Alaska, but like California area. Yeah, there's like those canoes that was only found in Polynesia, but they found some of those up there. You know.
Yes, there was that one. I remember seeing one along that line, and then there was another one in like the Seattle area where it's a fish hook, and they were talking about how civilizations across the world, fish hooks were like languages. They were very unique, very unique design, and they were showing how there was a fish hook in the Seattle Northwest area that were used by some of the tribes that were a match to fish hooks in the Pacific, only found in Polynesia. And they were saying that these are so rare and so unique that it's like you can make this connection.
Man, that's crazy.
So really interesting. Another comment here that they said in West Papua has a similar headset. Very interesting. And I do know that in ancient Tongan culture, the red feather in Polynesian, the red feather was like very special. Red feathers were of unique value. So going to places like, what was that?
I wonder what kind of bird that, you know what I mean?
I can't remember. I know that there is a name for the type of bird that it's most preference to, but red feathers were, and you'll notice it even to today, you know, on those really nice ta'avalas, the old ones, they'll put the red feathers on it. And so even to today, some of those things have come across for thousands of years, and we're still doing it.
Yeah.
Last comment here. Ooh, we were behind. We were backlogged for a second.
Man.
There are DNA connections to South and North America, but only tracing back to the 1100s. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. There's another interesting thing is not only the DNA, but also the chicken DNA as well. That there are certain type of chicken species that are only in the Pacific, in Polynesia, that they found in the Americas.
Yeah. I think those birds are extinct now. Oh.
We killed them all. We killed them all to do that. Okay, here's another one. Go ahead, Maka.
No, I was saying, I think it was that same documentary talking about, you know, the chicken bones, and you know how they talk about the gumala and even finding Polynesian bones, because I guess Polynesians have a specific jaw.
The rocking jaw.
That they found them buried in the Americas or South America area or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen that one too. Very interesting. I don't know if Clyde Moore is trying to be funny here or if this is real. The chickens that lay blue eggs from Ha'amoa. I do know that the guineas lay blue eggs, but are you
probably serious? I don't see a LOL, so he probably serious right there.
Okay. Ay, Clyde Moore, huminga itay ka Ha'amoa.
Man.
And Clyde Moore appreciate. It looks like Clyde Moore is. Oh, that's real. He says he confirms it's real.
Oh,
so
man.
Yeah, Clyde Moore is watching on X. So appreciate that.
Yep.
Very interesting. Malo kautama. Yeah, see, even Tongan Style was thinking we were joking, but Clyde Moore's for real, guys. He's not messing around.
Man.
Oh, Yahweh. All
It's
right.
real. It's for real.
It's for real. Let's come back here to some of the YouTube comments here. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's see right here. All right. Here's another one, and this is similar to. Okay, this is a fair question. This may be Claymore. Hey Claymore? Is this you or is this someone else? The original Claymore 728 on YouTube.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's you or someone else, but I'm wondering if there's someone with a similar tag or someone different. But this is a fair question, and it's talking about what we talked about earlier about Hikuleo being the god of Israel. And it says, is this coming from a Mormon's point of view or this coming from the old ways? Mormons believe Native Americans came straight out of Israel and found the Americas, yet their DNA is the same blood of those in the Asian continent. So I'll answer that first part first, and we kind of talked about it earlier, right, Maka, where guys, this is why we're gonna go to hell.
Well, Clyde Moore, Clyde Moore from Claymore. My bad. That's right.
Tako uhinga Clyde Moore ko tama ya ko ni ko original. Oko ya mahal ko get original. Or maybe you're the original and this guy had to say that because he's not. I don't know. But that's a funny comment, man. That's hilarious. I had to bring that up. Sorry.
Man, that's definitely a Fight Kava guy right there.
Yes, 100%. Those are the only people that are awake right now, Maka. Everybody else is.
Yeah.
So we already talked about it, that we're basing, even if we were to take out the LDS perspective, there's still a lot of data points that say, hey, these guys have similar beliefs back to Israel. My comment on
I think a lot of, because it sounds like he's going off of just the DNA only.
Yes. Yeah. And there's some interesting things about the DNA is we got to remember that there are 10 lost tribes. So if we go back and get the DNA of the quote unquote Israelites today, that's only 2 of the 12 tribes.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that we need to take into account is when they try, there's no DNA pointing back to Israel. Well, you're only pointing back to primarily 2 tribes because 10 tribes have been lost, been scattered all around the world. So in theory, this Asian DNA could be, if I were to concede that we came from Asia, the DNA could still be House of Israel. It's just one of the lost tribes of Israel that's been spread throughout the Southeast Asia area. Second part right here. And also you say Tongans were quick to adopt it because they saw similarities is far-fetched. Fair point. They saw how most of the islands took the fight to the Europeans in wars and what the Europeans were capable of. So Dupo IV didn't want to do that to his people. He forced out the old ways and accepted Christianity for his people. Tongans recognized the British royals as the imperial rulers. The Tongan monarch is influenced by the British. Tonga was under the protection of the British, just like Rarotonga and Niue. Yes, Tonga was never colonized physically, but they were emotionally and spiritually. All right, some fair comments. Any thoughts there?
I mean, I've heard a lot of people say the same thing, and again, entitled to your own opinion or whatever. But like I was mentioning earlier about my personal life, like everything happens for a reason, and and if we go by what what you guys are trying to share as far as your beliefs and ideas, like we just pretty much why we accepted Christianity. Because I remember I watched the old interview from your dad, right? He was talking about how he said we're already such a, like, not even touching on Christianity, but it's like we're such a religious and devoted people and loyal that it was easy for us because it was just like we just have a strong belief and a strong faith. It was easy for us to just adopt it or whatever. But now it just comes down to what you guys are saying. If that, because again, I'm leaning more towards that, but it's like we just pretty much going back to what we believed in, You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I mean, I can see how people have those opinions. Because again, I talk to a lot of people that say that, especially people who aren't from Tonga. That's the one thing they always bring up.
Yeah, and I mean, and
yeah.
it's a fair
Yeah.
point. I can see how you could think that. Here's a couple things that I would present here to Va'a over here, not the original Claymore boy.
Yeah.
It's a fair comment. Yeah, it's a fair question. But here's some of the things that I would. None of these are smoking guns, but I'll throw out some things to consider as to why this idea is. Number one, we already talked about the ancient religious beliefs that coincidentally are similar to ancient Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with hikuleo itself. Hikuleo literally means the tail end of the word or the voice. And Israel, when they were led out of Egypt, were led by the voice of God in the cloud, right? So if there seems to be some similarity there, right? That hikuleo, and then here's one from my personal interpretation. The origin story of Tonga is, there's the kiu, the bird that kind of represents hikuleo, comes down. There's a worm. He bites the worm, breaks it into three pieces, and then it's kohai, koau, momo, and those are the original people of Tonga, right?
Yeah.
When I study the scriptures, and anybody who wants to do this, go and pay attention to how God talks to a prophet when he first reveals himself to a prophet. And many times God will say, "Who is it?" or "Who's there?" And then the prophet will say, "It is I, Moses. It's I, Samuel." And then you go back and look at those words and say the kiu who comes down, who could represent God, cuts the worm. And then the words are kohai, koau, momo. One potential interpretation of that is God says, "Who is there?" And then the person responds, "It is I, Momo." That's one potential. Granted, people can say that's just a fairy tale baloney. Hey, whatever you want. Some people think God is fairy tale and a baloney, and I believe in that fairy tale and baloney, right? Here's another one that's interesting. The same year that Christianity makes first contact with Tonga, guess who's born? Tupou the first and Laufiri Tonga. The last two Tonga, right? And I just learned something new today that kind of blew my mind, and it goes along with what you're saying. So number one, I'll finish this thought. I get carried away with ideas sometimes.
Go ahead.
So that you telling me that's coincidence? The last two Tonga who carries the old religion as is in inheritance, and when he comes in, he becomes a Christian, right? Tupou the first, who is going to come through and become the Tuikanu Kupolu, who is basically the father of modern Tonga, he is first cured of a sickness from the old religion. He was born a sickly kid, and they took him to all the different doctors and witch doctors and stuff. They took him to the Tuitonga's priest. That's where he gets the name Taufa Ahau. Is because the Taula was from Mua, and so Taufa, that was the primary god, was Taufa, and then Ahau that's where the Taula lived, but Ahau is a name tied, and my dad will probably go over that in a future episode, is tied to the Americas. So Taufa Ahau gets healed by the old religion. He grows up in Mua amongst these, and then they both become Christians separately, one a Catholic, one a Methodist. And they're born at the same time for the transition of power that had to happen. Because I think as Tongans, we severely underestimate, and you're right, Tongan style, it is Taufatahi, the shark god. And so what we're talking about is there's only so many coincidences in my mind. Then you're like, maybe someone is driving this car. It's not just falling off the cliff. So you have those things that are happening. And then here's one that I just kind of came across recently in some of our discussions in the podcast. We underestimate how much Laufiri Tonga helped Tupo the first. He must, in the scriptures it says that in the last days, kings shall do things that no one showed them, and they will do things that no one told them. Okay? And I'm going to use Laufiri Tonga for this. No one told Laufiri Tonga to not fight Taufa'ahau. No one told Laufiri Tonga make a taumafakava for Taufa'ahau. No one told Laufiri Tonga that was going to be the destruction of his people, because all Laufiri Tonga had to do to really undermine Tupo the first was argue with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to win the war. He just has to cause chaos. And then what will happen? The British will come and take over, because the British were always looking for an excuse. So to me, someone gave the vision and the inspiration to Laufiri Tonga to say, hey, look, this kingly line, in order for my people to be protected, I have to end this kingly line. And it's not enough to just end my kingly line. I have to establish a taumafakava, which Tatu Ikan Kupolo has no rights to anything of that sort. But because Laufiri Tonga established it for him, that's his way of saying, carry the torch forward. And so when you add up all those pieces,
can you clear up the misconception? Because I know, again, how you always talk about academia and stuff. There's a lot of like literature out there that says that kind of steers away from that part. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, because there's some stuff out there that talk about Laufiri Tonga. It kind of puts them in a bad, in a negative light. Yes, because people have read. I mean, if I've read it, other people have read it. That says like how someone betrayed him. That's why he lost the battle. That's why Taufa'ahau ended up marrying his wife. Like, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know some people, what you're talking about is gonna go back to that part.
Yeah, and here's the thing that it's important in my mind to kind of answer that is Laufiri Tonga had all the rights to cause chaos. He was the highest ranked king. His family has been in charge of Tonga for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Tonga, yeah.
He has what you would call the sacred blood. Even Tupo the first didn't have that. And here's the interesting thing that I learned. This is how
even the son. Yeah.
He wasn't even the son. But here's the interesting thing, Maka, that I learned. Here's a coincidence that I just learned today, and you'll see it in a future episode. I did not know this, but Tatu Ikan Kupolo was not father to son.
Oh, you didn't know that? I mean, I knew that.
I did not know that.
Only because that's when it comes to as far as our history goes and genealogy, family history, that's what I like. That's what I follow and know a little bit about. But yeah, a lot of it wasn't, father to son, because I don't know if you know, at one point they had a Tupo Mohelfo, like that was a female for just a short, I don't even think a year. But I mean, already right there, that's not father to son. That's a daughter. That's a female. Exactly. But yeah, it wasn't.
So I didn't know that. But here's the pattern that we're talking about.
Tuitonga was father to son, right?
And the Tuihatakalaua. The first kingly line to not have father to son is the Tuikanukupolo.
Yeah.
And it only was created, the Tuikanukupolo was only created in like the 1500s. So only a couple hundred years. You're only talking like 4 generations away?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the only way that Taufa'ahau could have any claim to unifying Tonga is if he was one of those kingly lines. And the only kingly line that he could join, not through inheritance, is the Tuikanukupolo. So in a way, you could almost say, hey, look, God was preparing the way for Tupo the first, because there was no other way.
Yeah.
Right? Him not being born to the Tuihatakalaua or to the Tuitonga line, he has no right to any of that stuff. Now, with that in mind, how are you going to tell me a proud kingly line who's had his ancestors for thousands of years, father to son, basically handed over to a guy in a kingly line that's only a couple hundred years old, that was basically put together because the Tuitonga said, I don't want to do the work. So he created the Tuihatakalaua. Then the Tuihatakalaua got tired of the work and created. So basically, big brother pushed the work to the little brother, and then the little brother pushed the work to another little brother, and you're telling me he's just going to hand over that? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Besides, God was preparing a way for these two guys to protect Tonga, in my perspective.
And to go back to that's some real good points. Thanks for sharing that. The last part of that comment right there. Let's just say, just for that one part of the argument of, or what your comment is talking about, how even though we weren't colonized, I'm gonna just focus on that part. Let's just not to argue, but I would say again, I'm gonna just finish off of where you left off, where God prepared those two. It had to happen this way. But I also feel, not to take away from Tafahau as well, because I feel he was inspired as well, because I mean, there was no way that Tonga would have been able to win a battle against
100%.
So I mean, it just shows like the wisdom in that king, and then the inspiration from from up above, because it's like there's a reason why, not to make it sound like we're this mighty kingdom in the world or whatever, but it's kind of like he thought about his people and prepared his people, or prepared his country to not be happen to what happened to those other countries, and so he saved even in the laws today, how a lot of us Tongans know about how we can't settle land in foreigners. Like, that's wisdom right there. That's like inspiration.
100%.
Right, you know what I'm saying? And so you can say what you want to say here. They try to put it in a way to where it sounds like you guys were still colonized mostly spiritually, but at the end of the day, it's like, the country was saved because, the right decisions were made. And I'm sure he was being guided as well, you know what I'm saying, from either his advisors and definitely from, prayer and stuff. So,
well, and there's some of the interesting stories, because God doesn't usually interfere a lot, right? Like, how many times has an atheist said, I told God if he's really God, then he needs to do X. And God's like, I don't have to do any of that. And he doesn't do that. Yeah. But for whatever reason, with Tupou the First and Pita V, all the tests that Tupou the First put out, God answered.
Yeah.
Strange. That's strange, right? Yeah. Like, why would God go out of his way to make sure this guy knew, no, I'm the real deal? Right? Yeah. And so that's interesting. And then the other thing I would, as a follow-up to your comment, Maka, if I had a choice of being colonized and dictated what I would lose and what I would keep, or adopt a religion and, give up certain things, but still choose internally what I give up and not give up, I think I would take option B.
Yeah.
I would take option B over being dictated to in that way.
Yeah, because you're thinking about the whole country, not just yourself, you know what I'm saying? Your people.
Yeah.
And then also what you call it, but that's the maneuvering is so, because okay, let's just say I'm gonna adopt Christianity and the certain British way of doing things. But here's the thing, like, our land is gonna stay ours though. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty cool, I think.
And it's a necessity to understand. This is remember we talked earlier. How do you take the old school history that we're rooted in and to navigate into the future? That's all Tupou the First did. Is he understood what our country was and is, but then also said, hey guys, we are not going to survive if we don't do certain adjustments. And that's what we call leadership. Yeah. That's what we call leadership, is to carry your ancestors and your history and make it survive and navigate the new chaos in the world. And we can't argue with that. I have another comment here from Huku. The old story of Saint Christopher, how he dedicated his life to serve the highest. Tupou the First gave his loyalty to the highest, dedicated to the land of God. That's a very fair point. That just goes to show how much of it's, how am I going to say this without trying to be overly come across the wrong way? when you as a father or a when the ancestor makes a good choice, it impacts his generations after him for at least 4 generations, at very least. And the reason why I chose 4 generations is because God says, I will curse those who curse you for 4 generations. And I'm one of those that thinks in inverse, right? So if you make a bad choice, God says you can negatively impact your posterity for 4 generations. Then I say, what's the opposite of that? If you make a good choice, you can impact your posterity for at least 4 generations. And so this is something that I think is really important. Tau Fa'ahao's faith and his ability to be visionary was not just him. His ancestors before him had made certain decisions. That's like we're talking about. Sometimes people say the believing blood or whatever you want to call it. But there are gifts that Tupo the First had that are gifts from his ancestors who were loyal, who were faithful, and they gave that to him, and he used that to understand, you know what? We can deal with England, we can deal with America, but there's one guy above all of us that we're going to say, hey, you're the only guy that matters. So that's an interesting comment there, Uku. Any thoughts on that, Maka?
No, that's perfect. It just shows, like, let's just say, even if he wasn't religious or whatever, you could just say he was a really, really smart man.
Smart guy. Yeah. You know? And at the end of the day, we appreciate what he did, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Another comment here. A layman would think we were colonized, but a real Tongan would know that only our Otua shifted. Them lines are strong and are in plain sight. Culture is intact. And that's the big picture, right? You can always nitpick someone who's doing the work. Isn't that funny? Like when someone is doing the work, it's very easy to be like, oh, you messed up here, you messed up there, you didn't do that right. Very easy when you're sitting on the sideline. Get in the field and then tell me how easy it is, that how you would get it perfect. So I think that's what this comment is kind of saying. It's like, yeah, are we saying everything's perfect? But no, dude, our country still owns the land. Our people are fairly educated. Our people are across the world, going in all kinds of countries. Culture still intact. I mean, what more can you ask for?
I mean, that's like compared to a lot of the other countries. I mean, that's like, and again, I don't like, because I do hear some of our fellow Tongan talking about, like, you know, in a boastful way, but it's kind of like, but at the same time, it's just factual. You know what I'm saying? Like, we still got our culture, we still got our country, our land, and everything because of one man's decision. You know,
and here, you know, when I hear people kind of talk like that, that's coming from a very ungrateful and kind of a spoiled. You don't know what you got in front of you. That's like when I hear certain people here in America say how bad America is, how evil America is, and I'm like, dude, go to another country. And then and I always find that a lot of people who go stay overseas, you know, when they come back to America,
they miss America.
They love America. So as much as we're not saying America is perfect, right? But just because you're living in the blessed area, don't forget. It's easy to forget. You know, it's easy for us to criticize, oh, Tonga was colonized. Well, you're able to say that because Tonga survived. So let's at least recognize that for what it is, you know?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Let's see. Here's another comment here. I don't know if y'all read the accounts of Tau Fa'ahao the First conquering Tonga and him challenging the old priests. It's yes.
I've heard a lot of battle stories.
Yeah,
like some messed up ones too. But
yeah, I mean, he would.
Know, but that was the era though. It was just battling was just normal. To us, it sounds messed up, but that's what they did. That was just a lifestyle. That was the lifestyle back then.
That's trying to judge your great-great-grandfather while you're sitting with an iPhone and a laptop and access to the internet and all the food you can eat. against him and him wrestling stuff physically to eat every
Yeah.
day. You can't take the same measuring stick today and measure him,
Nah,
because if he
yeah,
took the same measuring stick from his day to us, he was like, man, what a bunch of
yeah,
lazy, ungrateful. You know what I mean? It can go
yeah.
both ways, but I agree. I mean,
And I don't think Clyde Moore is trying to say anything negative or anything, but because it was some crazy stuff that.
yeah,
But I was just saying, like, that's just what they did even before, you know what I mean, for thousands of years up until, I mean, when it was time to battle, that's what they just had to do. But
yeah. And
yeah,
this was and Tau Fahau was trying to make a point, right?
mm-hmm.
He's like, guys, I got the real God on my side, right? And I, it's the same thing that God told the Israelites when he took over some of the in the promised land. He would tell them, kill the men, women, children, animals, right? That's the mistake. I think it was at Saul, where Samuel or whoever told him to kill everything, and then he saved the animals to do sacrifice, and God
Yeah,
wasn't happy with him because he didn't listen. It sounds brutal, right? What?
yeah.
You got to kill the women and the children? What? Like what? It's like, dude, back
Yeah.
in the day was a different way of living.
Mm-hmm. And to Clyde Moore, I don't know if you've read go back and see if they have the story of the Kolotau called Hule. If you read that one's crazy.
Yeah. What did he do there, Maka? I'm not aware of it. Yeah, just quick summary.
Oh,
Obviously, wasn't very kind.
So he was Christian, of course, already at the time, but remember he was still kind of new at it. So like the missionaries were telling him not to do certain things, but it's just, again, that's just what
Yeah.
I'm just living. This is how we do things here, at that time. But there's a kolotau called Hude, right? And I think it was in Nuku Nuku, I think.
Okay.
And there was the chief there at the time was there was a chief that got kicked out of the Kolotau because he was on the Christian side. Remember, this is still when Christianity is still new, and the people from the old religion kicked him out of his own, Kolotau, and they took over. And I guess the chief that took over, I think his name was Ikahui, I think was his name. And Tafahau actually gave him a chance and asked him, hey, you guys are either going to come out or we're just going to come in there and kill everybody. Like that's your only option. We're giving you a chance now.
We're in war.
But the specifics of it is there's a story of like I guess the legend goes that that's where the name Fuakava comes from, is that story, because he brought his warriors from Hapai and Vava'u, some warriors from Hapai and Vava'u, and they were on Atata, I think, the island over there. And they had a little Ilo Kama and stuff, and he was challenging everyone. If anyone, but the story goes that no one's ever seen Ikahui, but he says anyone who vows today to make who can find him and cut his head off and bring him to me. And then there was an old chief that was there who had like some his leg was injured, and like he was just the last person you would think that he was a great chief in his time, but he was already past his prime. But the person who first fools the kava, he fooled the kava and said, I will bring you, and I'll bring you his head. And everybody looked around, was like, what? This dude was crazy, whatever.
Yeah,
but
how are you going to do it?
Yeah, long story short, they went in, took over and killed everybody, which ultimately the priests were mad and told Tafahau, hey, later afterwards, he's like, hey, you're not supposed to do that, whatever. He's like, what? He was like, do you want Christianity, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, anyways, this old man, I forgot the name of I got to go back and look at it, but he killed the chief and brought the head. And then everyone was looking at the heads, you know what I mean? And kind of like
trying to see where he is.
They killed everyone except two youngsters. And to prove who's this head right here. Is this Ikahui right here? And it's like, that's him. And Taufaha was like, he was like, go ahead and Omaya Ulu wasn't he? You know what I mean? And then the old chief yelled out and said, he said, Ngalo Yakoi. And then there's a saying that goes, or something like that. And they say he's the first one to fool the kava. And that's where they say, I made the Goana Fuai kava. I'm the first one. And they kind of, some people say, there's some, I don't know if you ever heard that, but they say that where Fuai kava comes from. And it's like a devotion or a commitment. And that's where it kind of first being adapted into testament and all that kind of stuff. It's just a cool story, but that's where the story about who they come from with Tafahau. But I
Nah,
kind of
very
scattered that
cool.
whole story, but it was pretty cool. I thought.
Yeah, no, that is cool. I mean, and that just goes to show that, you know, that oral history, that's what we have to go off of, and really Taufaha was figuring it out as he was going,
Yeah,
right? And he had to
yeah,
get inspired, he had to figure it out, which
yeah.
makes it even more miraculous, right? That he's
Yeah.
learning as he's going. And I think
That was just funny that the priest was like, "What are you doing?" You're not supposed to. He's like, "Hey, man, we're trying to spread Christianity. We gotta kill the enemies." You know what I mean? Or
hey, Tongan style, we'll put this up for a short second, just because we want to keep this PG.
shit. Maloki, I think he's feeling it right now. Talking.
Yeah. Mahalo fulahi o ingu kava he aho ni.
You might find out Tongan style at that minute.
Hey, all right. So here's another one that's interesting, and we'll probably close this in 10 minutes or so. But we have a connection here in Southern California with the Native American Tongva tribe. And this is kind of interesting stuff, because you're mentioning that group, that little tribe out in Africa, right? There seems like these little tribes that are popping up with village names on the oldest map in Los Angeles, spelling out Tonga village names back in the islands. Interesting.
Wow.
Very interesting.
I've heard of the Tonga tribe, but I didn't know about the Tonga village names.
Yeah. And this is 2.5 square miles. Kinicha, and is the 16th century Yucatec name of Maya sun god, designated God G when referring to the codices. And this is my father kind of leans on this as well. 2.5 is Ahau is a name directly from the Americas, and so that's where Taufa Ahau kind of gets that name, which is kind of ironic, right? It's just kind of interesting how things work out in life, like you're saying. Exactly. Like not and this is also true of just like life in general, and like as we go through life with God, there's no smoking gun, but there's just a bunch of little points where you're just like, maybe there is a guy upstairs doing something, So hey, here's an interesting comment. Dude from Inglewood was locked up with the native of Tonga, and he told the Tongan that they came from Tonga. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Hey, malo for the guy.
Similar, man.
Yeah. Malo to this guy to go to jail, pay a big price to
learn
to
about
get that information. maybe next time he'll make choices and he can just learn it on a live stream rather than having to go into.
Hey, who knows? Maybe that was meant to happen.
Maybe. Yeah. Dude, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's correct. Ahau is also the district of Taufatahi. Tupo Ahau is the name passed on in my mother's family, my mother's name. Yeah. Names. This is what's important about names, right? They're significant. Just like in Polynesian history, names are very important, right? They're tied to our culture. They mean things. Like when you're given a name, it's because a work was done or you're going to be done. Well, guess what God does when he has a work for his people? He gives them a new name. So I'm just saying that there's just stuff all over the place, There's just stuff all over the place. Hey, glad you enjoyed that one, 2.5. We'll go ahead. I think we'll close it. I appreciate all the comments here online. I honestly we spend a lot of time online, so we appreciate the activity. Once again, a lot of fun. Glad you guys enjoyed it, and really appreciate your time, Maka. And I appreciate you reaching out. It was a lot of fun. We'll definitely do this again. But any closing thoughts? I'll give you the last word, Maka.
Well, I was just gonna say, going with the names, sometimes I don't even know if this has any significance or anything, but some people, it's just crazy that in my own family history, that's where I was saying, who knows, maybe we're tied. I mean, all of us are tied somehow, you know what I mean? But you can see when it comes, going back to what you just mentioned about names, and that comment that who was it, Clyde Moore that made talking about names, So like going back to which I don't know too much about. You guys know more because it's tied back to like to Mua. So like I still see certain names being used in my family like today, like actual names. Like for example, I just found out on one of my lines, I don't know if you ever heard of the name like Fonomanu, you know what I mean? For example. So Fonomanu was supposed to be, he was the son of, I don't know if you ever heard of Sinai Takala Langlega. That was the oldest daughter of Ruaki Maka.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And she became like the first Tuitonga Fifine, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And her oldest son was Fonomanu, who became the first like Tuila Kepa. And that's how, but that name Fonomanu is still being used. And in that same line, there's a Tuimala. It's just crazy to see, like, man, that's crazy how these names are still being used, like in
generation to generation.
And it's just, but you know what's crazy is some too. Also, not to keep us too long, but
no, you're good, man.
There's some I don't know if it's an old Tongan thing, but some certain names too that has a certain significance to a certain family. I don't know if it's like I don't know what you call it, but sometimes you have to get, because in my family they still kind of like you shouldn't use certain names because you got to go ask permission because that has special significance to the family. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know what that has to do with any of this, but it's just cool to see like maybe a name from like 600-700 years ago is still being used today, and it's still, the respect is still there. Like that's just not a name. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it means something. Cool. Hey, Clyde Moore here said, more Clyde Moore.
Hey, without 5 minutes, got talk. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody. No, 100%.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what I wanted to mention earlier when I first messaged you about that's where the whole Fahu thing and everything comes in. Again, it's not to be fear achy or anything. For me, it's more the history of it. Like, it's not so much you guys are more like the origin of stuff or whatever, but me is like the genealogy, like, oh, this is where we come from and this is how we connected to. That's why I don't know if you've seen in some of the comments, when it comes to Urukalala and Tupo Toa and all those people, like I can break that down because a lot of that is in my family tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
no, 100%.
Yeah, that's my sometimes my comments be long, but it's like
no, dude. They're perfect. We're gonna have to put a filter on Tongan style here.
Hey, how they say it Tongan? You see my put my zigo Yeah.
Maria,
I mean, that's all I want to say. I mean, just just the names and like how you can find, like you start mentioning names. For example, I'll mention a name of somebody, like, hey man, we might be related. You know what I'm saying? Like I know we're all related somehow, but when I first seen y'all stuff, I was like, man, I wonder if these guys might know a little more about, that
so I think
discussion, but
I think
would
you
know
would,
for sure. Yeah.
You know who's even we'll only put this one for a short time. This is Clyde Moore's response to Tongan style.
Man.
Oh yeah, anyways. And no, I think you would love it, a conversation with my oldest brother. Dude, the guy is like a genealogist machine, and I didn't even know that until I went one of the last times I visited Tonga. Like these random people showing up to my brother asking him like, hey, can you confirm this line? Blah. And he has like fantastic memory. You guys probably have the same mind to remember all this stuff.
Yeah.
But that stuff's important.
Yeah, because the scriptures, they have the genealogy, you know what I'm saying?
It's important. Exactly. So, these things are important. And that's why we all have different talents, because I don't have that talent. But yeah. So yeah, no, 100% Clyde Moore. We will definitely look at, like he was mentioning, maybe have you and my brother on the podcast, have some discussions on family history. That would be great. And then just as a last minute comment here as we close out.
Oh, before you say it, thank you again,
Malo.
Thank you for having me on here. Like, Tama Kailoa Gwani. I appreciate you having me on here, and I'm grateful for just reaching out and having me on the podcast.
No, absolute pleasure. I'm flattered that you'd even wanted to be on the podcast. It's like, our little thing, man. Like, sure, man.
I was just like, what? He said, yeah. That's how I was thinking. I was like, what? I'm about to be on the podcast.
No, 100%.
Like, I'm grateful for everything, man. I'm just a grateful person, man.
That's the way to live. You tend to be happier. happier. We tend to be happier with that. So, last comment I'll make here real quick is this, and I think this is important. I hope everybody understands that, you know, we're sharing this history because at the end of the day, I feel like us as Polynesians, we've been cut up into pieces and spread apart, right? At the end of the day, I think there's a reason why our people were saved. And I think we have a responsibility. Every blessing comes with a responsibility. And I think one of our responsibilities is we need to, number one, establish our history. And then we need to start bringing in our brothers and sisters throughout Polynesia and remind them that we are all one big country, one big family. And it's when we're together that we can have a greater impact. And so that's really, hopefully, you know, I'm trying to be respectful to everything else, but at the end of the day, we have to try and establish what's true and then bring everybody to it, right? We can't go and appease everybody and say, oh yeah, yes. At some point we have to try and draw a line and if we believe in it, defend it, and then say, hey, look, you are part of the family. You're part of the circle. We're all part of the same family, and bring everybody in. And I think eventually that's what we'll have to do with our brothers and sisters. And it starts with these kinds of conversations. You know, you start from little things and hopefully it grows into something big. But with that being said, everybody online, you guys were fantastic. Only thing is Tongan Style and Clyde Moore, be nice to each other.
Hey,
And
play nice.
Tuku pe ai pe auhi mo fahi to the kava kava, not the online kava, because this is an online kava ceremony here.
Yeah.
We don't
Remember,
know.
it's a family show.
Yes.
It's a family-friendly show.
Okay, malo pito Maka. Thank you, everybody online. Always a pleasure. Everybody have a great night.
Jake, malo tu.
Malo. We'll go through here with our closeout. Have a good night, everybody.